really something that cuts across all of the sustainable development goals and is central to solving and advancing all of the sustainable development goals. So for us, the fact that there was a very strong reaffirmation of the governments that convened at the high level political forum that discussed, among other things, poverty, climate. They also discussed gender equality, and they have had this strong commitment. It's against the current global tide that is not necessarily always positive around gender equality. We have seen regressions in laws. We have seen countries that have been trying to restrict more rights of women and girls. But this really sends a message that the world leaders are paying attention to gender equality as a key foundation for our success for the 2030 Agenda of Sustainable Development.
Definitely. I mean, this sends a very strong message. The reaffirmation, the commitment is important. And as you stated, especially in the times that we are living in, whereby we've seen how globally some countries have exercised that, one, if I may call it, disparity in a way. How does this moment compare to previous milestones like Beijing 1995 or the launch of the SDGs?
Right. It's very much a continuum. The SDGs is reaffirming the Beijing platform for action. It very much borrows from the Beijing platform for agenda, which is the most visionary and comprehensive global blueprint when it comes to gender equality and women's rights. There is much to be done to further implement the Beijing Platform for Action. And so it's really significant that the high-level political forum has looked at SDG 5 on gender equality at this 30-year milestone year, where we also in March we had the Commission on the Status of Women, where we also had a very strong political declaration around the further implementation of the Beijing Platform for Action. And so it really is a very good continuum that we have two consecutive declarations unanimously adopted by the member states that reaffirm gender equality as the core principles carrying forward the Beijing Platform for Action.
This is indeed encouraging, and we've, over the years, heard the phrase gender equality and development. What does that look like in practical terms?
Right, there's still a lot to be done. The data is very clear, and we unfortunately also had some setbacks with COVID. Inequality is still very prominent. In member states, whether it's north or the south, there are a lot of gaps that we still need to be filling. Take, for example, women's leadership and participation. It's going to take 123 years to reach full gender parity. So that's 50-50 representation of women and men. And when we look at issues such as unpaid care work, which holds women back from being able to participate in productive work, and issues such as the pay gap. Although women may be working, there is pay discrimination. So we continue to see 20% less pay and earnings of women compared to men. And when it comes to this unpaid care work, 2.5 more times of time is being spent by women in domestic work and care work. The figures go on, and we have also new issues that we have to contemplate. And we've already had continuing high rates of violence against women, but there are new forms of violence that are shaped by the advancement of technology. Of course, there's benefits of new technology, that it is giving some women better access to finance, better access to information, but at the same time is creating new forms of violence in online spaces and by the use of technology that we are finding it more and more. And it has been discussed in these international forums also in terms of ways to address these digital forms of violence. So there's still quite a lot to do in the development world in terms of trying to close the gap and reach that ambition of the SDG 5. If I may, I think we also are facing lots of funding challenges in this work. Thank you.
I'm sure. I mean, those funding challenges could have to do with perhaps not many donors coming forward, but with the systems that you have been advocating for, especially a priority that has been mentioned. I heard you talk about care, and I understand that there's a system called care, your care system. I'm far more interested in that because I myself want to be cared for as well. So perhaps if you could maybe unbundle that. What does it mean in your terms, your care systems?
Right. Yes. So when we talk about care systems, it's not just looking at one dimension of childcare or just looking at reducing and balancing the care burden between men and women. There are also responsibilities that the governments have to also take on. So it's looking at it comprehensively as a system of governments, private sector, individuals, household, community. It is really a whole sort of ecosystem of care that we need to establish. And that has to be established through forward-looking policy of the government. So that's what we talk about when we talk about care systems. And it needs to look at reducing the care work, as I mentioned, through governments kicking in with their public care systems. There are private sector initiatives that could also take place. And then we also need to be looking at the care work that is being undertaken by women, even the paid care work that is predominantly taken care by women are often underpaid. And so we need to make sure that the care works that are paid are also decent work. And there is equitable remuneration for the very hard work that women undertake as carers. So it is a whole policy system and infrastructure services that need to be taken care of, looking at it from a public policy perspective. So this is an area that has been given increasing attention. And within the UN system, UN Women has taken the lead in also bringing together the different UN agencies that touch upon this issue, whether it's ILO or UNICEF from the perspective of childcare, WHO looking at it from healthcare. So really trying to look at care comprehensively also from the UN system, looking at and having the same strategic direction.
With that said, you've actually answered my next question that was going to look into unpaid work, discriminatory laws, social norms, and one was actually interested to establish what will it take to shift those, especially in this increasingly interconnected global village.
Yes, that's a very good answer question. Sorry, I mean it does come down to political will in many ways, and it does mean that we need to make sure that there is participation of women in decision making on these issues. As I mentioned, women's political participation is still lagging behind. And so when it comes to these discussions on national policies and laws, planning and budget decision making, we need much more women's leadership and participation in those spaces to be able to provide the perspectives of women, what is needed at the various levels. So first and foremost, we need to make sure that women are in those decision making positions. Second, we need to make sure that we have very strong data and analysis on these issues. UN Women supports surveys such as time use surveys, which is an SDG indicator, so that we can advise on appropriate policies. So data on how time is being used, but also data around resource allocation is important. We could be talking about building care systems, but if we cannot make sure that there is financing behind it, nothing will be moving forward. So we look at trying to cost what would a good care system be? What would be the financing that is necessary behind it? So that the advocacy for the policy changes also come with a price tag in a sense, and governments can appropriately build a plan towards financing the systems that need to be in place. So it really is about decision making, using data for evidence-based planning, and really putting funding against it. Also need to make sure that there is a very clear accountability system, that it is transparent, and women's groups, users are able to feedback on the usefulness of the services or any gaps that they see. So we do need a very comprehensive response.
One agrees one of the reasons why we develop these policies is so that they can be implemented effectively, and requiring the necessary funding in order for that to happen. And it would take us talking more about these issues in order to amplify them and, reach to those particular donors and understand the importance of such issues. Let's talk again about rural and indigenous women, who are often left out of the mainstream policy conversations. How is the UN Women making sure they're heard and supported?
Yes, a very good question. We do follow the SDGs ambition of leaving no one behind. And even when we look at issues like care, we do need to have different kinds of solutions for urban population and the rural population. So we are very much into learning about community-based care systems that can be accessed by women in the rural areas. And these are built very much through our consultations with the rural women, our partnerships with other UN agencies that have expansive programs in the rural areas. But in general, UN Women does have very strong connections with civil society groups that have a far further reach into rural areas and connections with indigenous groups. We have particular programs that we have in Latin America countries, building indigenous women's entrepreneurship and their ability to participate in the economy. We also contribute to more political processes, making sure that rural women, indigenous women also participate in local elections and have a particular say in the local decision making. But it also goes up all the way to international decision making forums, where we will make sure that the rural women, indigenous women's voices are channeled into the international normative frameworks. For example, we supported the CEDAW committee, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination, which most of the member states have ratified. They were developing a special recommendation around the rights of indigenous women. We collaborated with the CEDAW committee to make sure that the CEDAW committee had a chance to have consultations with rural women in building this general recommendation. And so we convened these regional consultations with our partner organizations in the different regions around the world. And we have made sure that this general recommendation comes out with the strong responses and solutions to the unique violations of rights that Indigenous women face.
What's the role of men and boys in making gender equality a reality? And is enough
Very
done?
much, yeah. No, great question. We need very strong alliance with men and boys. We do, and this is a question around social norms that I think you touched upon. We do need the partnership with men and boys in shifting the social norms. We have initiatives such as He for She, where we are partnering with male champions that can speak on gender equality and the benefits of gender equality for men also. Gender inequality also is, it manifests in men also being stereotyped into roles that they do not necessarily believe in themselves, but there is social pressure to conform. So we are mobilizing men and male champions in our work on trying to shift not only issues like care, but even political representation of women. Women are often held back because of the social norms and restrictions in the family from their male members. So political participation, their economic participation, of course, preventing violence against women, all of these issues, we need a partnership with men and boys, and the men and boys voice, that gender advocates amongst the men and boys really speaking in their community to shift the behaviors and the understanding.
Shoko, I'm very happy that we touched base this evening to talk about these commitments as well as the reaffirmation, the decisions that have been made thus far. And with 2030 being around the corner, from what you have told us, I'm sure we could also be ready to meet the targets of the SDGs. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon, and we'll keep on keeping in touch with you in order to see how we can help you steer this in the right direction.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
That was Shoko Ishikawa, Deputy Director of Policy Program and Intergovernmental Division at UN Women.
Nighttime radio, just the way you like it, on Channel Africa, where the night comes alive.